Welcome to the Yeah Come On Show podcast. Southside Steve and my co-host Jeff Cole. Brought to you by Yeah Come On Bourbon Whiskey. If it's not in your liquor store, in your bar, ask for it. Ask for it. I will tell you that this is an interesting situation we find ourselves in because I want to mention our other sponsor, which is a sponsor that I think plays a huge role in the world right now. It's because it's mental health, and that would be Ridgeline Counseling. And you can go to markwelltherapy.com. That's markwelltherapy.com. And David Markwell is there to help you. What a great sponsor to have on a show, Jeff, that is about life, liberty, and the pursuit of show business. And our theme is unsolicited material, because I think people can get mental when they do everything they're trying to do and can't make it.
Yeah, and then you spend lots of money sending stuff out.
Like you.
Yeah, just to never get a response or anything. I mean, I even handed a CD of my RFK Jr. song to RFK Jr. himself. No response.
It gets tough. It can work you.
I handed it to him.
I know. That's why we're always going to have a mental therapist as a sponsor, because we want you to stay in the game and try. And today we toss it to Peter Conlon. He is the chairman of Live Nation Georgia. But Peter also dealt with a lot of unsolicited material. Now, what you will see is not Peter Conlon as a guest. You will see Peter Conlon in our studios for FoxFM out of Alpharetta, Georgia, in the Invest with Roots studio, high above Oxygen Financial here off the square. But you'll get to see our morning radio show, the Southside Ride setup.
Yeah, this is a first look at the way we decorated the studio, because we're going to start taping clips of our radio show to put on socials, or maybe even here, like for instance like this, because we had a great interview with Peter Conlon, who worked for Jimmy Carter. So we spent a lot of time talking about his work with Jimmy Carter and the presidency and all that stuff, because he went to all the services in Washington.
Yeah.
And in here in Atlanta. And
we want people to know. I've learned a lot more about Jimmy Carter through Peter Conlon, but find out what kind of president he was from someone that knew him personally, somebody that went and had dinner in Plains, Georgia year after year up until 2 years ago. And when we say unsolicited material, even the great Peter Conlon sent out resumes coming out of the University of Georgia with no answers.
Yeah, he sent one to Jimmy Carter's campaign, one to Alex Cooley, who we ended up partnering with afterwards. And I think there was a third business or somebody prominent that didn't respond. But the Carter campaign did, and that's what started his career.
It started his career. And then later he would bring that up to one Alex Cooley, saying, "You never returned my resume, my phone calls, my letters." And then he got a shot to work with him, and the rest is history. So Peter Conlon has made it. So enjoy this. In the Green Room with Peter Conlon on the Yeah Come On Show podcast.
Welcome to the Southside Ride with Southside Steve on Georgia's greatest hits, Fox FM.
It is now time to talk to my friend Peter Conlon. This is In the Green Room with Peter Conlon. And Peter is the chairman of Live Nation Georgia. But those of you that grew up here like Jeff and I did, and you camped out for tickets at Turtles, which we've got a Pat Benatar $5.99 Turtles record here on display in our studio. You got your concert tickets, and you saw Concert Southern, and then you saw Cooley and Conlon, and you're like, who are these two guys? Well, they are the guys that made it all happen. And just to let those know, on 96 Rock, I was a part of Alex Cooley in the Electric Ballroom, and I got with Peter in a little history, and Peter's decided now to grace us with the same stories, and we've been doing it over a year, and it's all archived on the SouthsideRide.com. But it's In the Green Room with Peter Conlon, where we talk about all the stories of the Atlanta concerts, Jeff.
Yeah, this is great. And plus, special segment today, because Peter Conlon worked in the Carter administration prior to hooking up with Alex Cooley in the early 80s. So,
because Cooley ignored his resume. Peter was trying to get hired there, but then he ends up in Washington with Jimmy Carter, and, of course, worked for the administration for 4 years, and then started off with basically, I guess, a tour of Willie Nelson, who is actually coming to Macon, Georgia. We can get into that later. But Peter's been off the show for 2 weeks, and for good reason. I don't even know how you're doing, but I know that you were at every funeral, every how do you service? I would say a service for Jimmy Carter. Peter, thank you and welcome on the show.
I just trying to get back to normal. I woke up this morning with kind of some congestion, I guess. My voice isn't great.
Well, it's going around, and so good luck with that. The kids, man, I am to the point now the only kids I get near are mine, and I'm making them wash their hands 10 times a day. So the funk is out there. Plus, you've been on the road flying around. You know, when I saw the service in Plains, Georgia, and then I see the service in Washington, D.C., and then I see the service back in Plains, Georgia, I'm like, I know Peter Conlon is there. I know he's in the room somewhere, and you're traveling and flying, and I just can't imagine the whirlwind. But I didn't see you on camera. I looked for you, at least the times. I'm sure you were on camera at times.
I doubt it. It's a big. The cathedral's a pretty big place, and it was kind of a whole situation on getting in. You had to go to the hotel, Shoreham Hotel ballroom, and you had to get processed and go through security, and then they put you on a shuttle, and because you had all these dignitaries there and all the presidents and the president and all former presidents and first ladies. And so they had like a 6-block security zone that you couldn't go into.
Wow.
So everything was by shuttle. So, a lot of it was, I got there, I think at 7 a.m. and I think I got over to the cathedral at right around 9. But everybody had to go through that process.
No matter who you were. So when you were seated, I don't know where you were in the cathedral. Who was around you? Anybody you recognized?
Yeah, well, I was next to Bill Gates. He came in right after I did.
That's awesome.
What you got in the cathedral was in zones, and that was first come, first serve.
Really?
And
wow.
Yeah, and I was just sitting there. Then I looked, and this guy sat down with his son and girlfriend, and it was Bill.
So you're like, did you say, hey, man, just want to say hello. I love Apple.
It's Microsoft.
Microsoft. See, I got that wrong.
Yeah, no, he was trying to borrow money from me, so I didn't want to talk to him.
You know what? I hate it when billionaires try to borrow from my friends. It's got to be weird when you look at a guy that you know is a billionaire and basically started computers. He made the first or whatever. But when you look at a guy with that kind of money, did you look at his shoes or rings? Did you notice anything that was over the top, or is he kind of regular dresser?
He's kind of a regular. I don't think he's into fashion.
Yeah. No.
But he was very charming to people. I didn't want to bother him. I didn't say anything, but people would come up and say hello. He was very nice to people.
Oh.
Very approachable. And I know he was a good friend of President Carter. I know he went to Africa with him a couple times and was also a supporter of the center. So
yeah. Well, when you look at the documentary that's out, and Jeff's watched it now twice. I've gotten halfway through it. I'm going to finish it today. But it's really a great watch, and it's Jimmy Carter, Rock and Roll President, and it came out in 2021. But Jeff and I are both assuming y'all have been working on this for a few years because nobody's wearing masks, or maybe you don't wear masks when you do a documentary.
I don't think it was before.
Okay.
I think COVID.
Good.
Because I don't remember having to wear masks.
Yeah.
And we were still in the office. So yeah, because they filmed me in my office, so we were still in the offices. So this is prior to COVID. And I know
that you wrote in there. We know through talking to you in the green room, and for those that don't realize, Peter is, I would say, a good friend of Jimmy and was with Rosalind. I'm fascinated that you went down to Plains, Georgia, and had meals with them and conversations and saw former President Jimmy Carter several times a year. But I like some of the quotes where you put in there saying that Carter was a progressive Southerner and he wanted to appeal to younger voters, said Peter Conlon, Atlanta-based music promoter, who got his start as an intern and then worked your way into the presidential campaign. And just to hit on that lightly, I know you had a big job. You were in charge of fundraising. You were the director of fundraising for the 1979 presidential campaign.
National fundraising director for the re-election. Mm-hmm. Although we never called it re-election because that's what Nixon had used, and nobody wanted to use that term.
Right.
But I was the national fundraising director, and
that's great.
But but I was on the political side in the first campaign. I helped organize 5 states: Pennsylvania, Indiana, Michigan. and then after that, I moved over to the finance side, and then I went into the administration. I was assistant treasurer of the inaugural committee, and then after that, went into the administration, was White House liaison for the SBA, and then I left that to go into the second campaign.
See, I tell you right now, I would do a business with Peter because Peter's not going to steal. You don't run Treasury and run those campaigns. Peter probably has never taken a nickel from anybody, but he can raise a nickel for you, which is good stuff. How are you doing emotionally? What did it take a toll more than you thought? Seeing and knowing that your friend, when you know that that's your friend or a loved one in a casket, some people react differently. How was that for you?
I'm still processing it. It hasn't totally hit, and knowing that, I'm not going to see him again or talk to him. It just takes a while, I'm happy for him because the last couple of years of his life weren't great. In hospice, he wasn't in really great shape physically. And I know how kind of person he was. He didn't like not to be doing something, so it had to be hard on him. He always wanted to be active and doing something, and so that had to be hard on him. And he was such a religious person that I know he was probably excited about the next thing, that this was a transition for him, and he was going to go on to this greater experience. So I think he was happy at the end, but I think the last couple of years were tough on him. But it's just tough when you lose somebody you really like and care about, somebody you admire. There aren't that many people that you can really admire nowadays.
Well, that's a great point.
One of the things that I loved about seeing in the documentary is all the footage of him at some of these concerts and these events, and you just see him with that big, beautiful smile, like really into it. Like he's, to me, the only president that kind of looks cool hanging with, like the Allman Brothers and Willie Nelson and all the rock stars. Like even Bill Clinton looked a little awkward when he's around musicians. Jimmy Carter looked like he really loved the music and loved these guys.
He loved music. Just absolutely loved it. Somebody asked me in an interview a couple of weeks ago, did he really like music or was just something he did for politics? And I'm like, no. This guy had a huge record collection, and I know Chip stated that when they didn't have a lot of money, they had like one of the nicest stereos around,
Yeah.
His dad loved music, all kinds of music. Classical, country, rock. Dylan was impressed when he first met him because, then Governor Carter quoted some of his lyrics to him when they first met.
Wow.
And, Bob considers Carter to be one of his best friends, and Carter considered Bob to be one of his.
Did you see, was Bob, I'm assuming Bob's there. Some people, that's not their scene, so you never know who's going to show. And as you just alluded.
I didn't see Bob. I don't think Bob came.
You know what? You alluded to it, too. It's kind of, you've been through that. You lived in Washington, and this was extra security. We know kind of where the world is right now anyway, and you've got all the former presidents, and, that's a lot of power in one room, and you got Trump there and Biden there. And you're like, wow. So the security had to be immense. I think for some people like that, even when you watch We Are the World documentary, you can tell that Bob's not totally comfortable in that scene around a lot of people. So I would think maybe not. But for you, it felt to me like, I even told you, I said, you know what, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, Peter. You got things to do and you're going to be traveling. I think for you, it was something you needed to be there, and I think it was worth the hassle, and you don't mind the hassle based on what you do for a living, I'm assuming.
Well, I wanted to say goodbye,
Yeah.
I could have gone to the planes but there was no way for me to get from D.C. to the planes one in time because they flew directly down there in Air Force One. And trying to go through an airport and then get to Atlanta and then drive 2 hours. There was no way to be in planes,
Yeah.
But I intend to, in the near future, I want to go down and visit the gravesite.
Is it odd? You know, you look at JFK. You know, he's at Arlington, and certain presidents are in certain places. You know, George Washington, Mount Vernon, if you want to go president number one. But with him, you know, there was no Arlington, although, you know, he served in a naval officer. But it's kind of bizarre. I haven't seen this church other than what I see on television. But just to be there, I guess no real security. His gravesite is right next to his wife at a small church in Plains. It's kind of odd.
No, it's actually on his property.
Oh.
He's buried on his property by his house.
Did not know that. So that's private. So in other words, it's not easy to get there, I'm assuming, to see it.
Well, he left all of his property to the Forest Service as a park.
Wow.
So that will be a park.
I did not know that.
He so loved planes that he wanted to make sure that there was a reason for people to visit planes and to keep it going. So that's why he's made it kind of like Mount Vernon. I mean, he's buried there at his house, and his house will be, I guess, open to the public. But he and Rosalind are buried right behind the house.
Wow, that is crazy. Did you know Amy at all? You know, she's the only one any of us know because, you know, she's holding hands with her mother and her father. He was one of the first ones to walk, you know, after becoming president. You remember this little redheaded girl? And, you know, I see her now grown up. I just didn't know if you had any relationship with her at all.
Oh, yeah, I've known Amy since she was a little girl, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
And she would come to some of the concerts or to Cirque du Soleil with us. And, you know, I talked to her. But, yeah, no, I know Amy.
Yeah, how's she holding up? She doing okay? Or is she happy, too, knowing her parents are in heaven, I'm sure?
Well, I mean, they're all, you know, having to deal with it. You know, they're accepting it, I would guess. But they're, you know, they understand what a great loss it is. You know, they depended on their parents a lot. And, you know, it's a big loss for the world, to be honest with you, for all those two did.
You do look at that and you know he's 90. You said he was, the last 2 years was rough, but he's 100 years old. So he really was all there like at 96, 97, it sounds like.
Yeah, I saw him. I guess the last time I saw him, he was 98. He went to the Bob Dylan show with us. And, yeah, he went into hospice a little while after that. I guess maybe. But he was active till the end. I mean, I remember when he had fallen down in his head a day later, he was up in Nashville building a Habitat house, you know.
Wow.
I mean, he always wanted to, he always was very active. You know, he's an early riser and, you know, from the farm days and he just always wanted to be doing something. He didn't like to waste time. If you ever really wanted to get him angry, just make him wait, you know.
Really?
He hated to be left waiting. And, you know, he told me one day, he said, I love the Secret Service. And I said, well, that's great, sir. He said, yeah, I give them a sheet of paper in the morning on where I need to be, and they get me there on time, every place.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, in the documentary, which I'm guessing you probably filmed maybe 5 years ago, so he had to have been 95-ish, and he's all there. He's 100% there, talking music, talking everything. It's great.
Yeah.
One more thing in the documentary I wanted to ask you about is those concerts, those pop-up concerts on the White House lawn. Were you around those?
Yeah, I went to a couple of them. They were usually around another event, like I was at a picnic, and I think maybe the rhythm section was playing. I can't remember. But he would do different themed ones. I know he did the jazz one, and then he did, Willie played on the White House lawn, and that was a big thing for Willie. Got him a lot of national attention. But yeah, he would do different events on the lawn.
Yeah, those look fun. I mean, there's some great footage of those concerts.
And he did ones in the East Room, you know, classical music, and
wow,
you know, in the East Room. He's a big music, you know, aficionado. So he loved music.
I didn't even know at the governor's mansion right here, you know, not too far from our studios in Atlanta in Buckhead. Back in the day, yeah, Dickie Betts, you know, all these other people. He was working with Allman Brothers. He did concerts on the lawn at the governor's mansion.
We did here too, huh?
Yeah, Southern music. It was all, you know, you look at the relationship just with the Allman Brothers, and then, you know, there are people out there like Johnny Cash, Charlie Daniels, all these people, James Brown, that even wrote checks for him. it's just unbelievable how he touched Georgia and was everything Georgia. And nobody knows the story better than you. And for those that don't know, if you haven't, heard us talk about it, Peter has many things at home, but you have things in your office. And Jimmy was one that did a lot of dictation. He didn't write many letters or notes, but you have several framed in his handwriting. And to me, I could walk in your office every day and look at that, read it, and just get a little chill.
Yeah, he would always send me little handwritten notes thanking me for stuff, or have a lot of photos with him, things like that. Whenever I was with him, it was always interesting. He always say to me, "Well, Peter, you need anything I can do for you? Would you like me to call somebody?" I'd be like, "No, Mr. President, I'm good."
Look at that.
I never asked him for anything,
But he asked you for concert tickets, didn't he?
No, he never did. Actually, I would call and ask him.
Oh.
I would say, I got, Dylan's coming. Do you want to come? Or, when Cirque would come every year, it was funny. I would say, "Mr. President, would you like to go to Cirque and bring your family?" He'd say, "Well, there's a lot of us." And I'd go, "Well, that's okay." And it was 35 for the family. Because he'd bring all the kids, the grandkids, great grandkids. It was fun,
35.
But,
that's a lot.
But but he liked to go to things, and he loved doing family things.
Yeah. I'm so, I guess, I don't know if proud's the word, but in closing on this conversation, we just wanted, I like the coolness of this conversation and learning things about Jimmy Carter. Not that we won't ever bring it up again, but the fact that you were there and the relationship you've had. I'm so proud of you, something you were doing in the 70s when I was just a kid running around at 12 years old. It's just very impressive. And I just love y'all's relationship and the fact that you can share this with our listeners. I just think it's very cool.
Well, no, I'm glad to do it. I'm always glad to talk about President Carter. I'm glad he's now getting credit for a lot of the things people don't know he did.
Yeah.
That, Reagan benefited by, Carter ended inflation, not Reagan. Carter put it in move, took all the hits politically, and then Reagan benefited when it went away.
Yeah.
Carter did a lot of things, established a super fund to clean up after spills. We don't have any oil crisis anymore because he set up reserves. So they could never do that to us again, because when he was there were no reserves. So now if there's ever an embargo, we have reserves to fall back on.
See, things like that I do want to highlight, because I think people look at it as maybe one of the worst presidents, and we're finding out different, and we find that out through you and other people in this documentary. We definitely say that you should watch the documentary. Our Peter Conlon's on it. Rufus sounds like he wants me to interview him next. I don't mind interviewing him, because
I had somebody show up here to do something in the house, and he's in his kennel, and he doesn't like it.
He doesn't like it. Keep in mind, Rufus weighs the same weight as I do. I think he's around 200-pound puppy now. But, you might have to let him out of that cage that, is 6 foot tall?
Yes. You can live in it, I think. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Peter. We're glad you're back, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Feel better, and God bless you and former President Jimmy Carter. It's Peter Conlon in the Green Room.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.